to do some kind of state of talk, and I replied that I couldn't address anything as huge as the full state of Tcl', but I could at least talk about what the TCT's been up to for the last year, with a particular focus on releases and what's going on with the repository. And so that's what I'm going to talk about. What releases did we make, and what's the condition of the development tools. We put out release 867 just in August. Has a few new feature tips included in it. The OO copy command has gained the ability to name the namespace you want that new copy to make use of. And tip 464 adds support in TK for something known as window multimedia keys. I don't know what that is, but I hope those of you who do know what that is are happy that we can deal with them now. This release came with a minor upgrade in iTcl'. We've gone from 4.0x to 4.1, and I've used the phrase NRE compatibility bugs as a very oversimplified description of what's going on. Suffice it to say that iTcl' 4.0x had some implementation strategies that, once you dug into them, just were fundamentally incompatible with the kind of context tracking that needs to happen, in part due to NRE, but it's a broader problem than that. So in order to correct that architecture, I bumped to 4.1 because those changes were incompatible with how ITK 4.0 was making use of iTcl'. So if you're going to start using iTcl' 4.1, which is bundled, you need, and you're an ITK user, you're going to need to go to ITK 4.1 as well at the same time, or else you're going to have terrible, terrible problems and crashes and things like that.
So we have an ITK 4.1, we're also bundled in release?
Not bundled.
Oh, okay.
But when I did the work on iTcl', I did the corresponding work on ITK and the corresponding work on iWidgets, and all three have been released. And it would be great if everyone upgraded to all three of them. And I think they're all better targets for upgrading than anything that's been available before. But I do know that there are large parts of the world still in the 3. And I'm trying every time I come back to this stuff to make that a less attractive proposition and make moving to 4.1 more attractive. That mostly happens through feedback. People telling me why it's not good enough yet with concrete examples. Then I can do something. Another change that happened in this release is the Tcl' link var. Are there a lot of users of Tcl' link var? Anybody?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. This is a way to tie C variables to script level variables. It's been around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I just put this up there because some changes went into place. I'm kind of iffy on the compatibility. The folks that did it were happy with it, and I didn't interfere. But what changes got made to Tcl' link var to make it friendlier to validation type work. So if you're entering a value in an entry box and you're getting pieces of it as time goes by, where a piece would actually fail the type, but you're moving towards something that's going to pass the type, this allows it to be forgiving of those prefixes until it gets to the final result. Whereas prior it would have thrown an error. That's very iffy, vaguey kind of description, but that's the sort of change that went in. So if you're a user of link var and you haven't moved to 867 yet, be aware that's something to be on the lookout for. As usual with releases, we keep the Unicode standard up to date. We take the libraries we depend on and get latest versions of them. And then this August 2017 release date, this was almost, or was it actually more than a full year since 866. So over that time period, there's just an enormous amount of bug fixes. And once I was putting this slide together and I saw the list, I said, I can't begin to summarize that or pick out the 2 or 3, which are the most important. If you're still haven't gone to 867, give a good look to the release notes to see what the improvements are that you're going to wish you are on 867. We've also put out in September the very first 8.7 release, Alpha 1. And the great news here is that this is even more confirmation and demonstration that the trunk is dedicated to alpha development. It is ready for new features. It is taking on new features. And so even though I have a sense that Tcl'2017 and TK'87 development hasn't been super active yet, when I look at the list of features that's already gone into Alpha 1, there's a fair good amount of good stuff there. So some of the new features you can start enjoying now if you're ready to try out these pre-releases of 8.7. The TK image machinery has developed a syntax for denoting the alpha channel values. A lot of these things, as we go through, I can give you the one-liner description. Some things I can give you a lot of detail on, a lot of things I can't. So if you're interested in these things, I'll do what I can. People in the room can probably do what they can, and then it may be a matter of querying the people who did the work.
Okay, do we have more than just on and off now for alpha?
Yes, there's a full alpha channel.
Okay.
As I understand it, there's been a full alpha channel capability in TK images for a very, very long time. And the missing piece here is something about the way you can denote it in script so you can actually control it.
Okay.
It used to be that you had to use a PNG to make use of it.
True.
Okay.
Is 456 visible at the TCL API level?
Yes. Yes. So TK progress bars, you can now write text on them. And there's some new options to do that. The edit, undo, and edit, redo operations on a text widget always used to return empty string. They were kind of like void returning procedures. Now they've been converted to value returning things, and the value they return is the range of the text widget that changed. And this is handy for some uses of being able to react and respond to an undo and a redo. We've actually heard a little bit about TIP 456 already at the conference. This was putting in, I really abbreviated it as SO reuse port, but there's a handful of new capabilities. It's an extended interface to how you open servers from the C, and corresponding to that, a couple of new options to channel configure went in to let you control it at the script level as well. And that's one of our flight-aware bounties that was achieved and collected on there. TIP 458, there are now ePOL and KQ notifiers in this release. So I know that's been a need, particularly for flight-aware. This was one of their bounties. And for other folks who are really using the, especially socket capabilities at a high scale. Like any alpha thing, I think there's still a few kinks to work out on some of these. I've had some trouble with them, but there's definitely at least alpha quality. And they're going to only get to beta quality if people try them out.
Are those build time options, or when you start up TCL, you specify which method would switch?
I believe you can control it through configuration. I know that the configure script, at least on Unix, looks through what facilities you have available and makes a selection based on what you have. If you don't have ePOL or KQ available, it will fall back to the pre-existing select implementation. On my systems, it goes and gets ePOL. And other than that, I assume there's switches to actually control it. I've never had any need to use those, so I've never learned what they are.
Okay.
It's configure enable. Turn it on. Configure enable.
So it's build time.
Yeah, you have to
So-
build that on.
Right. Yeah, I don't think these switch at runtime based on anything.
I was just checking.
Yeah, you commit to a notifier and yeah. Then another one of the bounties that Carl mentioned, the package files command, helps you get a handle on just where your package came from, especially if you're in an environment where you've got lots of packages strewn about where it could have come from. This is a handy introspection. Reg sub minus command, this is a nifty little addition to the reg sub set of operations. I think this came from Donald, and basically takes a very common 2-command idiom and turns it into a common 1-command idiom. But it lets you, as you have matched a substring and you substitute in, instead of substituting in a string, you substitute in the result of running a command.
And when that's combined with minus all, it's a lot more than a 2-command idiom in Tcl before.
Right.
And this is a feature
Really, really nasty to write that
Yes.
safely.
This is a feature that Perl has had since the very beginning that has been inexplicably missing from Tcl.
Someone found a happy way of doing it, that was part.
Tcl'2017 is something in the OO infrastructure. I summarize it by just naming the new public C routine that showed up. Do you want to say anything on what that is?
If you're writing commands, say, particularly if you're writing procedures that are going to be extending the set of definition plans, this allows you to find out what object, what class is actually being defined right now. So, there is, so it's an extension to the self command in that context.
And what would people be doing that they'd be happy to have the ability to use that?
There will be a future tip which will actually make use of this. Where this is something which I was discussing with Gerald earlier this week.
Fair to say this is for people who are customizing the OO system?
This is for people who are customizing it and extending the OO system itself.
And that tips 477.
Okay.
Yeah, it's for people like Nathan and Sean.
Fair enough. And tip 472, when Tcl looks for numbers, it now will notice the prefix 0D as an indicator that the digits that follow are representing a digital number and not, say, an octal number or a hex number, which just happens to not be using its higher digits. Oh, and I should say something about waning iTcl3 support. This has to do with the Tcl wrong num args routine, where this is something it's a utility that's made available to extension writers. It's a very nice way to get Tcl to form a usage message for you out of a handful of things you already have. And the difficulty is that in iTcl3, in iTcl, these are object-oriented things, and so typically a lot of the commands will be taking of the form object name, method name, and the arguments. And that object name, method name gets mapped to some procedure inside of iTcl to do the operations. And in that context, object name and method name have been lumped together as objv0. And so if you were just to call Tcl wrong num args, instead of getting error foo bar should have had this, you're going to get error foo bar should have had this. But we don't want that. We want it to say what it means. And so there has been inside of Tcl for ages special code to detect, am I being called by iTcl, and if I am, I should pull this apart and remassage it, and there's all kinds of if-defs in the code about hacks for iTcl, I think is the name of one of them. So what's happened is in 8.7 is hacks for iTcl is gone. So if you continue to use iTcl3 with Tcl 8.7, you're going to see ugly error messages for syntax problems. Now, that's not fair, you shouldn't do that. Well, here's the thing. There are routines for talking to the core and letting it know you've done this, because we had to have them because Tcl now has ensembles, Tcl now has aliases. Tcl had to solve this problem too, and we've got machinery for doing it right. All that happens is if Tcl'3 is going to continue to exist, a new version of it has to come out making use of those tools, and then it will not be a problem. So this is my little thumb on the scale to anyone developing Tcl'3. It was probably just me at this point. This is a note to myself: bring Tcl'3 into the modern world. Anyhow, it's probably more attention to that than it really deserves. But that's since I spent a lot of time on it this year, and I got picked to do the talk, but you have to suffer through it. Okay, so those are the 2 releases that got made in the last calendar year. Talk a little bit about the state of the fossil. This is the repository where development continues, and in fossil development we work on branches. Different release sequences come from different branches, so I want to mention a few of the key ones. The core 8.5 branch, it still exists. It is collecting bug fixes for the eventual one-day release of 8.5.20, which will be the last one. This is not the main focus of development. We ask that people who want to contribute development to Tcl and TK to focus on the 8.6 branch, where you can make bug fixes and they will get released quickly-ish in the next 8.6 patch release. But if there's something that's particularly important, critical, it crashes something, it's a known serious security problem, yeah, we'll go ahead and put it in 8.5 as well, so that eventually 8.5.20 is in better shape. Or if something is just fall off a log easy and you want to put it in 8.5, I don't object. But the focus should not be on improving 8.5 any further. If there's things to improve them in 8.6, and people complain, hey, this is still broken in my 8.5, well, yeah, move to 8.6, it's fixed there. I'm going to just hold off releasing 8.5.20, I think, until 8.7.0 is ready. That seems to be the right time. And that's subject to change if circumstances require. The 8.6 branch, this is where we're making our stable patch releases from. And the key now is, since we've got a trunk open for doing 8.7 alpha work, that's where all your new features ought to be going. If you've got some great new thing you want to put into Tcl, it's going to go into 8.7. It's not going to go into 8.6 anymore. 8.6 is for bug fixes. I used a variation on this slide last year, and I said regular releases at least 2 a year, and the year went by and I made 1. So this is my stake in the ground. I'm going to try to get at least 2 this year. I'm going to try to improve that, and already in some conversations here on ways we can automate more of the release procedure, ways we can monitor state of the trunk. I think we've got tools and support improving to make that more likely. The next release will be 8.6.8. Anybody have an opinion when they'd like to see 8.6.8? Are there bug fixes already since 8.6.7 people know about that they really wish they could get their hands on?
Something happened with TK and the Mac platform on 8.6.7, and a lot of the widgets, the binary widgets, are broken as far as scrolling and things of that sort. So,
is it already fixed?
I don't know. I'm stuck on 8.6.6 because
Okay.
we use the stuff in production.
So we have a need to fix a serious bug and make a new release of TK on the Mac platform. Okay. Stay in contact with me if it's fixed, and we'll turn the crank, because we don't want to be broken in our current release.
Yeah, have you been in Memphis going on that?
Yeah. You get a lot of fixes from Mark Collard, and there's also stuff going on inside of the OS with the High Sierra upgrade. So they probably fixed something for that, and they're still trying to work out what's going on. And given that Apple just kind of drops stuff on us from above, this stuff happens regularly and often. So I'm not mad. I'm just As long as I know which version works and what I can tag. Yeah.
Finally, the trunk. This is where we're doing our new feature alpha development work. We've already doing 8.7 releases from it. I want to emphasize, the trunk is open for 9 features. If you've got 9 features ready, let's get the tips written and voted on, and as soon as a 9 feature comes in, I will convert the trunk to targeting 9. I'll create a new branch for 8 legacy, where 8.7 will continue to develop, and we'll make it happen. 8.7 and 9.0 will essentially be brought into existence in parallel. Now, my thinking on that is mostly that the overall aim right now is for us to get to 9. And 8.7 exists primarily for the purpose of putting into Tcl'8 any features that are needed to assist with the 8 to 9 migration. If there's something that can go into 8.7, which will make a script writer, make an extension writer have an easier time moving from 8 to 9, then that's something I think needs to go into 8.7.
Yeah,
In addition to that, because it's open and because we take contributions from the world, we're going to get things which are just new stuff, not aimed particularly at serving migration. And 8.7 is a perfectly fine place for those things to go as well. One that comes to mind that I just know is of recent vintage is there's a call for a new string insert subcommand. And that's the kind of thing, that's not going to aid any migration, it's not critical that it help us get to 9, but it's a contribution, and if on the merits it seems like a good contribution to accept, that would go into 8.7. But that's not the purpose of 8.7.
We have at least a tip on killing octal, cutting its head off, filling it full of garlic, mouth full of garlic, sewing it shut, etc.
Yeah, if
Wouldn't that
you were on the
justify-
mailing list,
Yeah.
you'd see that in the last week and a half, there's been a discussion about a roundup of, I believe it was 8 tips that I consider to be nearly ready to go, all of which require a Tcl'9.
Well, what's where I was going to say, I think we have enough to justify a 9 branch.
Yeah.
The tip being on 9
Yeah,
and 8.7, then it's clearly saying to the world, we're looking at going to 9.
Right, we
As
just,
opposed to the people listening
Yeah.
now.
we just need to vote and implement those tips.
I expected we would leave the conference having opened it. That's not what we ended up doing, but now I expect us to get it open within a month.
Okay.
My opinion was that at the conference is the wrong time to do that, it's,
I suspect shortly after we return home, there will be a vote called, and then depending on how much time latitude we want to give people to voice their opinion, however long that takes, we'll have a 9 branch
No,
open.
but what I'm saying is that signals to the world outside of this room that we're serious about 9.
correct.
Let me say one additional point on that. I will open 9 on the trunk as needed. And I suspect, I don't remember all of the tips you flagged, we'll move to 9 for Tcl' before we'll move to 9 for TK. I won't lockstep that. So getting a TK9 branch open won't happen until
Right,
there's a reason for it.
I haven't seen any tip that demands a TK.
To that implies an obligation that Tcl'9 needs to be a friendly enough support for 8 written extensions like TK, that TK87, TK86 will continue to run.
With the caveat, they will have to be recompiled to run.
Sure. Source compat. Okay. The new business
will
is
break C source compatibility.
Okay.
there's just a handful of new things I wanted to mention. The other kind of big TCT related thing of the last year is the old system for managing tips has gone away, and the new system for managing tips is up and running. Mark Jansen was the big moving force behind getting that done, with assistance from a lot of people, some of them here, some of them may be listening online. So a big thanks to all of you. Here's what it looks like. So it's essentially it's just a page in Fossil. It's its own repository. And so you still have the ability to look through the list of tips that are available. You can click on these things and see each one spelled out. There's a few advantages of the new system which are pretty clear. One of them is less of a barrier to entry to get going with it. You can start editing your tip and submit it with a lot less narrow channel to get your idea into here. There's less of a choke point on contributing your ideas for new features. The other thing which I think is an advantage is that when the tip system was invented back around 2000, we kind of improvised a lot of it. In particular, the format. We sort of invented a format which could easily be converted to all the various output formats we were interested in at the time. The world has created solutions to this problem since then. In particular, Markdown is very popular. So the new system makes use of Markdown, which hopefully people who are going to be contributing will have a familiarity with or can get up to speed on without feeling like they're learning something just for the sake of tips. They're learning something that's more generally useful. I did notice as I was putting this on the screen, one tiny thing I missed from the old system, which I think is easy enough to add here. The old system used to color code this table, so I could see very quickly which ones were done and which ones were pending and which ones were voting. And I'd really like it if the Fossil experts could make that happen in the new system too. The other thing I will mention is the Tcl' Developer Exchange, www.tcl.tk. This friendly service here has actually moved to new machinery. And I don't think I'm talking out of school to say that at this point.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
I was going to say it too.
So there were some difficulties managing the system within active state, and in order to solve those, some volunteers from the community stepped up and set up a new service on a Linode, I believe, and made them move the content, flip the switch, and you still have the great Tcl' Developer Exchange experience. You just now have a new machinery providing it to you. So, in case you didn't know that, now you know that. Is there anything more that could be usefully said about that?
FTP hasn't been added just yet.
Okay, yeah, the FTP service we make use of is still on active state machinery.
Yeah, but that's fine because Apple have decided that FTP and Telnet should go away, so we removed them from ICO.
And I guess I should mention, this isn't a case where active state pushed us out saying you're not welcome here anymore. It's just a matter of some machinery was failing, and it was a way to quickly recover from that without burdening our hosts at active state.
Yeah, the other comment to make is their machinery, the machine they donated over the years was co-located, and we had no way of rebooting that machine. So we had to rely on their sysadmin to do it whenever. So this way now it's under our full control.
Right. We're not pestering the sysadmin
Yeah.
for recovery issues.
And the sysadmin said thank you.
Yes. I think there's goodwill and good spirits all around on this. Yeah.
Who controls the Linode?
Me,
The Tcl' Community Association.
TCA pays for it, and myself, I think, and maybe a couple of others. Cliff, I think also has got the passwords.
Who controls the Tcl.tk domain?
Me,
What about the Tcl'9.1 domain?
me,
Are the name servers are under Linux?
no, the name servers of the platform, and the same group of guys have access to that.
Very good. Thank you.
All right,
See that pattern there, Richard?
I'm starting to.
This is the first step of consolidating. So
Is this written down anywhere?
That's a different question.
It's in
I might
numerous
have an email
emails.
saying most
all
of it.
take separate planes home.
Yeah, well, so Gerald and I were in the same car the other day, so that could be.
Damn! Oh, that's not good.
Okay, at that point, that's all I have prepared. I left other in case there were other topics that people wanted to raise. I was expecting not to consume all my time, but that didn't turn out to be true, so.
Just,
Can you clarify where we are, like semantic version? Is it now?
What are you looking for?
Well, like last year it was like we're gonna start following semantic versioning for version numbers.
Mhm.
Is this come to fruition or coming to fruition with Valley?
There is a tip on this. I can tell you, I'm not personally on board with the entirety of it. I like this. I like the spirit. I like the idea of version numbers having meaning that can be relied upon. I think once you start nailing that down to very, very specific things, it gets difficult. I don't know what I can say briefly more than that. Is there something particular where you've not been
It's
happy?
either it's binary. You either do semantic versioning or you don't.
No,
So-
no, that's not the case. It's well, if you bump your major every release, you do semantic versioning. Everything else, there's judgment calls. Is that really a change?
Yeah.
So,
especially with the stocks mechanism, guarantee binary have been for a long time.
there is an existing tip. There is an existing branch making changes, apparently in support of that tip. I'm confident there'll be more discussion as the folks driving it make another run. I can just say stay tuned on Tickle Core. I think we are largely in agreement with semantic versioning as we have done things, but if people are clamoring for us to start adopting it, they must disagree. They must think we're falling short. And so maybe the useful thing for me would be to hear where have we fallen short in a way that matters. And maybe that's something to do offline or an email or something. Yes, sir.
So one thing I think it was mentioned that it's critical we do now is really make it plain that 8.5 is end of life. I realise guys like 8.5 are stuck on 8.4, and there's good reason for that for them. But I know you mentioned it, but I think going forward we have to be disciplined about it. Otherwise, we're using scarce resources to
Here's one.
mutilate a corpse.
Here's one step I've taken in the last year in service of that goal. This is the home page. You'll notice on the front page there's no mention of 8.5 anymore.
That's okay. The links didn't work anyway.
Really?
Okay.
Okay. But sure. Do you see, where have you seen in, say, the last 6 months people talking up 8.5?
So it's generally occurred where someone's made a patch and they're saying, "Oh, should I backport it?" And I just think we just have to reply and basically say that there is no expectation that you backport to 8.5. If you choose to do it for your own needs, that's a different question. But from our point of view, no imperative whatsoever.
Right.
I think it's just a matter of staying consistent on that.
Okay. Who's next, Cliff?
Next is Sean and Andreas talking about future